Greetings from the Philippines to the world. We are on Facebook Live on Eagle News and also on our streaming site, eaglenewslive.com. Watch us on our YouTube channel at Eagle News. I am Cesar Vallejos. Welcome to Open for Business. Join me to discover the latest news and information in business around the world. Stay ahead of the curve from vision to action. For more than 4 decades, the Philippine bilateral relations with Russia continues to grow and prosper with the increasing number of high-level exchanges between the two states. During the Duterte administration, the friendship and cooperation between the two countries reached a remarkable progress. And there is probably no one who can better describe and discuss Philippine-Russia diplomatic relations than the Russian ambassador himself. His Excellency Igor Khovaev will join us on the set of Open for Business today. Before we show our exclusive interview with the ambassador, here's our feature story. Pop culture is not only a lifestyle, it is a big business as we see it on movies, TV shows, comic books, games, and many other interests. Eagle Broadcasting Corporation conceptualized the first EBC PopCon to study popular trends and how it is evolving and impacting on various disciplines, art forms, and even entrepreneurship. Here is the Open for Business feature story.
Ito po ay hindi po pangkaraniwan.
Filipino anime dito sa Philippines.
Kung walang naniniwala sa inyo, maniwala naman kayo sa sarili nyo.
Yung comics industry niya, niche na lang talaga siya, no? Whereas before kasi, nung old comics industry, talagang it's a big industry, no? Talagang lahat ng Filipinos nagbabasa ng comics, no? And ngayon, ang purpose na lang talaga namin is to continue the legacy of my grandfather. Na sabi ko, well, we will continue his legacy by publishing, by self-publishing yung mga legacy characters kasi ito eh. We are actually exploring that yung digital platform. In fact, some companies are approaching us. So as of now, we don't know yet yung long-term benefit nun. But I believe yung projection ko is it's another platform to explore. Just do one issue and then from there malalaman mo naman yung feedback ng mga fans ng mga magbabasa ng mga comics ng comic story mo. If it's good, why not? Tsaka kailangan may tsaka ka rin and kailangan you have to be aggressive in terms of when you release your comics. You have to contact din yung media para ma-expose yung work mo, and you have to know then some people to para they could review your comics, and then syempre din social media it would help you build your readership.
When you go to the creative industry, walang pera dyan kung artist ka. Pero I have to say na mali sila. Kasi as an artist, hindi mo kailangan ikahon yung sarili mo. So, there's a lot of possible jobs or possible directions for your career, not just na nag-illustrate ka or nagdo-drawing. In regards with copying, binotak ko yung term na copying for beginning artists or beginners or amateurs. Kasi if you're a young artist, you don't have develop your own style yet. So wala ka pang nade-develop na sariling identity as an artist. So what is the next best thing for you to have knowledge and have an idea on how something actually works is to looking at other people's work. Now since dahil nasa digital era tayo, sa internet world tayo, ang kalaban mo hindi lang Pilipinas. Ang kalaban mo buong mundo. So you have to check kung nasaan ka in terms of where do you place yourself. Gano'n na ba ako kagaling as an artist? Do I excel on this direction? Baka mas mag-excel ako kung let's say mahilig ako mag-games, pero mahilig ako mag-drawing. Pero hindi magaling yung drawing ko. Pero I like doing games. What if mas magaling pala ako maging programmer? I love math or I love doing calculations. So you have to keep yourself in check kung saan ba yung directions na magandang puntahan for you to be successful in your career as a creative.
At tiyaga sila ng hindi birong tiyaga, yung bang sobrang masikap silang magampanan yung pagdodrawing ng tama. Kailangan magawa ng artist, yung talent niya, magamit sa talagang makabuluhan. Yung bang hindi magamit yung kanyang talent sa, lalo na nga yung may konting karamaan. Ituloy-tuloy lang nila yung kanilang hilig. At yung mga pagkita ng pera, follow na yun eh. Susunod na yun eh. Pagka yung ginagawa mo ay tama at makabuluhan, siguradong susunod yung mga ganong bagay.
Our conversation with the Russian ambassador, His Excellency Igor Khovaev, when Open for Business returns. Stay with us. Open for Business is very honored and privileged to have with us the Russian ambassador to the Philippines, His Excellency Igor Khovaev. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for coming to
Thank you so much for inviting me for a friendly talk.
I'm very honored to see you
It's a great
again.
privilege for me and a big responsibility. I remember that.
It's my second time to interview the Russian ambassador, and I noticed that you are already very well versed with the Filipino audience, and it's like you've been here in the Philippines for several years, Ambassador. How long have you been in the Philippines?
4 years and a half already. So you see, I'm not a newcomer in your country.
Exactly. So you know Tagalog words already, Ambassador.
Yes, just a few. Please, I'm kindly asking you to forgive me. It's quite difficult for me to speak Tagalog.
Okay, Ambassador.
I prefer to speak English.
Perfect. Ambassador, the Filipinos and the Philippines as a nation is very excited because based on one of your last interviews, you said that President Duterte's recent visit in Moscow, in your country, was full of milestones and landmarks. Can you expound more on this, Ambassador?
Thank you for your question. First of all, I would like to clarify that President Putin called the Philippines a very important partner of Russia in the Asia-Pacific region. So it's a very significant political statement. And I'm happy to say that the two presidents, they outlined main fields of our mutually beneficial cooperation. Cooperation between two reliable partners and good friends. So these fields of cooperation include trade and investment, humanitarian field, culture, education, science and technologies, security and defense. And competent ministries in Russia, they have already received proper instructions from the Russian government how to explore new opportunities of cooperation on their set tracks. I'm sure that all these instructions will be fulfilled in the interests of our two nations, and it will also contribute to the regional peace, stability, and sustainable development. So in this respect, it was a historic event, because this agreement of our two presidents is unprecedented.
Which is exactly what we noticed, Ambassador, that for the last 2 to 3 years, there was a dramatic change in terms of relationship. What do you think are the factors why that relationship has become stronger, more strategic? Is it because of this, the friendship between our two presidents, and with his openness in terms of coming with his independent foreign policies? What do you think are the factors that makes this partnership, this friendship between our two nations different for the past 2 to 3 years?
I think it's a package. It's a package of favorable factors. Everything is important. Of course, I'm also happy to say that there is a special chemistry between President Putin and President Rodrigo Duterte. So they call each other friends. It's really important. And I'm sure that Russians and Filipinos are happy to know that. Of course, and it has a very positive impact on the development of our bilateral relationship. But there is also an objective factor. It means I'm talking about an objective need for the Philippines to diversify your foreign policy, if I understand correctly your foreign policy. Diversification means preserving old friends and partners, and preserving old partners and friends, and getting the new ones. So Russia is ready to be a new reliable partner and good friend of the Philippines. And on the other hand, my country also needs new partners and friends in the Asia-Pacific region, because it's an objective precondition for a successful social and economic development of the Russian, Siberian, and Far Eastern regions. So, and in the current world, all of us depend on each other. We have common challenges, common threats, common enemies. First of all, terrorism. So it's time for all of us to combine our efforts in order to efficiently cope with these enemies, with these common threats. No country, big or small, is able to efficiently deal with these threats on its own. We need help of each other. So I'm saying again, there is an objective need for the Philippines and Russia to build a new partnership and friendship, thereby opening up a new chapter in the history of our bilateral relationship. And I'm deeply convinced that it will be in the long-term strategic interest of both Filipinos and Russians. And it will contribute, as I have already said, to the regional peace, stability, and sustainable development, because everything is being done in compliance with the international law.
I have a follow-up question on that, Ambassador. But since you mentioned President Putin, we also learned that the Russian leader may visit the Philippines soon. Can you confirm this, and what will be the preparations of the embassy regarding this, Ambassador?
First of all, I would like to clarify. I have never said that President Putin may visit the Philippines soon. President Putin was kindly invited by President Duterte, and this invitation was accepted with gratitude. But at the same time, all of us should understand that any official visit of the head of state is not just a trip of tourists. So it's a remarkable event, and this event must be well prepared. What does it mean? It means that a solid package of important bilateral documents should be prepared for signing, because such visits should bring tangible results in the interest of both our nations. And all of that requires joint efforts,
Preparations.
It will take time. So My clarification is very simple. Such an important visit must be well prepared. So now it's too early to talk about any dates of that visit.
But is there any...
Personally, privately, as the Russian ambassador, of course, I want such a visit to take place as soon as possible.
Yes.
But we should be realistic. And we should combine our efforts and work hard in order to prepare well such a visit in the interest of our two nations.
But in the absence of any definite date, Ambassador, any specific timeline, so maybe in 6 months' time or maybe in next year?
So it's too early to talk about that. So please, first, we need to prepare the visit well. We need to prepare many documents for signing, because a big number of draft documents are now under consideration in both Manila and Moscow. And as soon as we prepare well the visit, so we'll be able to talk about specific dates.
Thank you,
So
Ambassador.
let's move step by step.
Perfect. Now, Ambassador, speaking of the agreements, of the preparations, during the second official visit of President Duterte in Russia, there were about 10 business agreements that were signed, and it developed a lot of very, very specific memoranda, MOUs and MOIs that were signed. And can you provide us some, key highlights of those agreements that were signed during that time? And how do you think will, these agreements help in, making the trade relationship between the two countries better and more progressive?
So I would like to stress that many results achieved during the recent visit by His Excellency President Duterte to Russia, so they are unprecedented. Because Russians and Filipinos, so unfortunately, our two countries have never had intensive cooperation in the past. So we need to explore many opportunities for mutually beneficial cooperation for the first time in the history of our bilateral relationship. So it takes time. It requires much efforts. And that's why maybe the number of signed agreements and the number and the value of signed contracts maybe is not quite impressive. But all these are the first steps of our business people on this way. What's important is that the Russian market is open for Philippine exporters of agricultural products and seafood. And the Philippine market is now also open for Russian exporters. So we are creating step by step favorable conditions for intensive, mutually beneficial business ties, for trade and investment cooperation. We pave the way for big projects in the energy field, telecommunication, transportation, agriculture, pharmaceutical industry. So I'm sure that all of us are on the right track. And these favorable preconditions will become tangible, fruitful results in the interest of our two countries.
Which is very...
I am quite optimistic.
Which is very interesting, Ambassador, because based on these data, I think Philippine exports to Russia is about $86.07 million. And for the Philippine imports, that's $1.27 billion. And it's very interesting to know, especially the ones listening, our farmers, our coconuts, nuts, bananas, are exported to Russia. And do you think, Ambassador, this would result to Russian businesses looking at the other agricultural products in the Philippines?
Yeah, definitely. In my view, it's beyond doubt. I would like to assure you that Philippine tropical fruits and vegetables, so they are in a great demand in Russia. But business people should be brave. It's not. I fully understand. It's not easy to to explore, to open new markets. But all of us should be brave. And politicians and diplomats will support our business people. That's their responsibility of politicians and diplomats to create favorable political and legal conditions for intensive business cooperation. And in this respect, the recent visit of His Excellency President Duterte is very important. As for agricultural products, once again, so please, we invite all interested business people from your country to go to Russia, to explore new business opportunities. And now we see a growing flow of Russian business delegations visiting the Philippines, because it's up to business people to decide what can and should be done in this or that business area. So the government cannot instruct, the Russian government cannot instruct the Russian business people what they should do. But we are creating favorable conditions for their business activities. And now, believe me, please, we have a few very promising, really big business projects which are under consideration.
That's great to know, Ambassador. Now, because
by the way, let me add, as for some figures regarding the trade volume between our two countries. So, according to our information, official information of the Russian Federal Customs Service, so the trade volume between our two countries last year was 1.2 billion US dollars. Well, to be frank, so it's not really impressive. But what's important is the trend.
yes,
Because 1.2 billion US dollars, so it's 2 times more than the volume of trade between our two countries in the previous year.
I see.
So the trade volume doubled up. So it's a very encouraging trend. And this year, the trade volume is growing.
And it may double
steadily,
again.
yes, steadily growing. And of course, the governments of our two countries, the diplomats, they are doing their best in order to encourage the increase of our bilateral trade.
Now, Ambassador, you mentioned about the trend, the growing trend also of Russian businessmen in trade missions coming to the Philippines, exploring and checking what possible businesses they can really venture here into. The question, Ambassador, is what are, because off-cam, we were also talking about the commonalities between Filipinos and Russians. And speaking of agriculture, for example, how different is the palate or the taste buds of Russians compared to Filipinos? And that's just one, probably one of the traits. You know, how well do we, or how similar are we in food tasting, in our palate? And what other similarities between Filipinos and Russians that you think could be the key factor in making our trade volume getting bigger?
I think the key factor is the key favorable, good factor is very clear. I don't see any area where our two economies have to compete with each other. But at the same time, I see a lot of areas and fields where our two economies can and should complement each other. So that's why I'm quite optimistic. But nothing can be done automatically. Everything depends on people. In this case, on business people. They should be consistent, persistent. They should explore new business opportunities. And we, the Russian diplomatic mission in Manila, so will do our best to encourage, to urge the Russian business people to go to the Philippines, to any region of your country, including Mindanao. We encourage them to go to Mindanao, to all other regions of your country, to pave the way for new business projects.
More questions when open for business returns. Stay with us. Open for Business is back, and still with me is the Russian ambassador, His Excellency Igor Khovaev. Thank you, Ambassador. That was a very enlightening discussion, and it's very interesting to know that the trend, as you mentioned, is really increasing. It's growing. It gives a lot of opportunities for both Filipinos and Russian businesses to come up with more partnerships and increase that trade volume. Now, my follow-up question there, Ambassador, is that we, of course, dealt with agriculture and other areas, but there are, as you mentioned, areas of cooperation, new areas of cooperation. Like, for example, we learned of this industrial cooperation, exploration of space, and the use of digital technologies, and also we have, of course, oil and gas exploration in the West Philippine Sea, and these are very exciting.
And in Russia as well. The interested Philippine companies are invited to go to Russia to explore oil and gas deposits in Russia. It should be a two-way street.
Oh, I agree. So what are these industries and sectors where you think our trade partnership should be focused on, aside from, of course, agriculture? And why what do you think is the potential of those sectors or industries?
You have already asked me about the milestones of the recent visit paid by His Excellency President Duterte to Russia. So, and one of those milestones is that the two leaders selected a few areas which can and should be drivers of our bilateral cooperation. Among them are agriculture, energy industry, including possible use of nuclear technologies exclusively for peaceful purposes. So oil and gas exploration, transportation, the participation of Russian companies in the implementation of your state program, build. So telecommunications and digital technologies, outer space exploration as well. So it's time for us to focus on a few selected areas. And we believe that these areas will help all of us increase substantially our trade volume. It will help intensify technological exchanges and the cooperation in the humanitarian field as well.
On that note, Ambassador, of course, one of the key areas of cooperation also is the expansion of defense and security. And of course, on the latest news that we are looking at is that there's also some explorations on the production of sophisticated light arms, weapons, supply of helicopters, submarines, and other equipment or technologies that will help us modernize the armed forces. How important do you think, and how important is modernization of this equipment, especially now that, as you mentioned earlier, there are threats, and both our nations should really work together. Not only our nations, but our the ASEAN region, so that we will be able to secure the countries and the region against terrorism and external threats. What's your thoughts on this, Ambassador?
First of all, you didn't pose this question first. Thank you. Because most of your Philippine colleagues, in the first place, they ask me about the prospects for our defense and security cooperation. And thereby ignoring or not paying proper attention at the civilian fields of our mutually beneficial cooperation. As for the security and defense cooperation, of course, it's very important. So I'm not in a position to go into the details. I hope all my Philippine friends to fully understand that it's quite sensitive matter, and it's up to specialists, it's up to experts to share to formulate, articulate their assessments. As a diplomat, what I can say is that the reasons for our readiness and willingness to promote this highly responsible cooperation, because it requires mutual trust, mutual political trust. So our reasons are based on the fact that our two countries have common threats and challenges. That's why it's in our national interest to help our Philippine friends and partners increase their defense capabilities against our common enemies. First of all, terrorism, drug trafficking, and all other evils. So our defense and security cooperation is not against any other country, not at all. So it's developed in full compliance with the international law. And we believe that this cooperation will also, as I have already mentioned, will also contribute to the regional peace and stability and security. You have, I saw, there is a special program, state program of modernization of your armed forces, as far as I know. So Russia, as a reliable partner and good friend of your country, is ready to help your country to implement that program in accordance with your national interests. So we are ready to discuss any option of our cooperation.
As a matter of fact, Ambassador, I think when the Philippine Navy vessel, BRP Tarlac, was in Vladivostok, Russia, that was also something historic. And of course, the 3 Russian warships which docked in Manila was also something historic. What does, for you as a diplomat, Ambassador, what is the meaning of those historic events? That we never really thought that things like that will happen. And the second one related to that is you recently introduced also the first defense attaché, not only to the Philippine military officials, but also to the media. What is this what's the historic significance of these efforts between the two nations?
Thank you. It's a very relevant question. Of course, when we are talking about the necessity to intensify people-to-people contacts between our two countries at all levels, in all fields, it also means that we need to do that in terms of, as far as the military-to-military contacts are concerned as well. You have just mentioned the port call by the Philippine Navy vessel Tarlac. But not only Tarlac visited the port of Vladivostok. So another Philippine Navy vessel, Davao del Sur, also visited the port of Vladivostok.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and a high-level delegation of the Philippine Navy attended the celebrations of the Russian Navy in the city of St. Petersburg last July. So Admiral Empedrat was at the head of the Philippine Navy delegation, and it was a great pleasure and honor for us to welcome this delegation in St. Petersburg. Of course, I'm happy to see Russian Navy vessels, ships to visit the port of Manila on a regular basis, simply because it's an opportunity for Filipinos to see Russian Navy ships, Russian sailors, to see that they are normal, nice people. They have nothing to do with those aggressive, stupid bandits, Russian bandits as portrayed by Hollywood movies. So, and of course, it's an opportunity for the Philippine Navy and for the Russian Navy to establish good contacts. Yes, to have joint exercises. Yes, to exchange, to share experience, and so on and so forth. So we'll fully support these contacts, and I hope this cooperation will develop.
On the, without giving us the details, Ambassador, on the defense area and security areas, are there specific programs that you wanted to share as a program? Like, say, would there be training programs that will be developed within the groups? And in terms of modernization, which aspects of the defense system will be helped in terms of technology or other soft skill enhancement?
So what I can say now is that we are ready to discuss any option of cooperation. No limits for us.
No.
And I believe that we are, I mean, both two parties, so we'll be able to find mutually acceptable, mutually convenient, suitable forms, ways, and methods of our mutually beneficial cooperation.
Ambassador, you said earlier also about this area of cooperation, and which is the possibility of exploring building of the nuclear power plants. And are there succeeding discussions regarding this, Ambassador? And you can correct this, Ambassador, but one of the interviews or one of the print materials that came up, you said it's up to you, to the Filipinos, to decide, and will respect any decision taken by our Filipino partners. That's in the context of the building or exploring building of nuclear power plants.
Yes, right. We are confident that any successful cooperation should be based on mutual trust and mutual respect. The respect cannot be unilateral. If the respect is unilateral, so there will be no respect at all. It must be mutual. So we deeply respect our Philippine partners. We fully understand that the cooperation in the nuclear energy field, it's another sensitive matter. In any country, it should be supported by both government and public opinion.
Yeah.
We know that very well.
Yes. Because
of the Russian state-run company Rosatom. So it's operating in so many countries around the world. And the problems are similar in any country.
I see.
So that's why we repeat again and again. It's up to you, our Philippine partners, to make decision, a relevant decision. And we, as your partners and friends, will respect any decision taken by you. We can offer, we explain what we can do for you, but it's up to you to choose.
Well said, Ambassador. Okay, we cannot help but ask you this because, of course, the labor agreement is among the priorities of the Philippine government, as the number of OFWs are really increasing, especially the household service workers throughout the years. And of course, we also know that there's a limited number of available visas, but are there already updates or on the discussions regarding our OFWs in Russia, Ambassador?
Yes, this subject was discussed by our two presidents. And just for your information, so President Putin clearly said, Filipinos are most welcome in Russia. So the Russian economy needs Philippine workers. But at the same time, so it was said once again that our two countries should build a robust legal basis in order to protect well the rights and legitimate interests of Philippine workers and their Russian partners. I'm saying again, rights and legitimate interests of people must be well protected. That's an exclusive responsibility of our two governments. The relevant draft agreement on the cooperation in the labor field is now under consideration in Manila. So we hope to get a feedback from our Philippine partners as soon as practicable, and we'll be ready to continue our discussions. Privately, I believe that we need to intensify our joint efforts in this area.
Are you looking...
I'm very glad to take this opportunity to say once again that Filipinos are deeply respected in Russia, in my country. They are well known as law-abiding, hardworking, and nice people. So the daily life of Filipinos and daily life of most of Russians is based on similar values. So I strongly believe that Filipinos will feel comfortable in my country. But once again, we need to build a robust, effective legal basis for the cooperation in this area.
On that case, Ambassador, are you looking, both governments, both the Russian government and our Philippine counterparts, is there any specific timeline on how those details can be threshed out?
No specific timeline, of course. So we and our Philippine partners, so we are working on that.
About how many Filipinos are, any estimate on the number of Filipinos working in Russia, Ambassador?
Not many as compared with many other countries. According to, as far as I know, according to the data of the Philippine embassy in Moscow, so there are about 10,000 Filipinos living and working in Russia. And all of them need a legal protection of their rights and legitimate interests. So our two governments, diplomats, need to do everything necessary to achieve this aim. So there must be no space for any illegal recruitment agency in this field. Because ordinary people can be victims of irresponsible, illegal recruitment agencies. That's why everything should be done on a legal basis, in full compliance with the Russian law.
And we respect that, Ambassador. Now, if there are about...
So people must be well protected.
And for now, Ambassador, I think with the latest developments with OFWs there, with I think there's an increasing number, and hopefully with all these trade negotiations and the bilateral negotiations between the two countries, there could be more Filipinos who will be working there as professionals and not only household workers, household service providers, but also as professionals. There are two interesting things that, when I was privileged to go to Moscow, there are two concerns of Filipinos. Basically, the number one is the cold weather and the language. So, can you also share with our Filipino audiences, what is it about the Russian language and the coldness of Russia?
So, believe me, so to be frank, I'm quite surprised. As far as I know, Filipinos, they are almost everywhere, including Scandinavian countries, Canada. So, where the climate conditions are similar to the weather in Russia. So, I'm sure that it's not a problem for Filipinos to survive anywhere. It's not an obstacle at all. So, and by the way, so not not all regions in Russia have a cold weather. Many Russian regions, so they have a quite warm climate. No problem at all. So please, don't be scared. Okay? Offer the Russian climate. As for the language, I'm confident, I have a strong belief that Filipinos are smart, talented people. All Filipinos are fluent in English. And I'm sure, that's why I'm sure. It's a great advantage of you, of your nation, by the way. But in Russia, of course, English is not as widespread as it is in your country. So Russian should be spoken in Russia. And I believe that, I have a strong belief that it won't be a problem for most of Filipinos to learn Russian. Because Filipinos, as I have just said, are smart, talented people. By the way, so Filipinos are working, many Filipinos are working in Japan, in Korea, in China, in Arabic countries. Are they able to speak local languages? At least some of them.
Yeah, not necessarily. Yeah.
Yeah, but believe me, please, Russian is not as difficult as the Chinese language, the Korean, the Japanese one. Forget it. It's not an obstacle at all. Okay?
Agree, Ambassador. As a matter of fact, the New Era University is offering Russian language, which is a New Era University is our academic partner, and they're now offering Russian language for beginners and Russian language
yes,
for
I know.
businesses.
I know that, and believe me, please. So we highly appreciate it. We are very grateful to the Era University for that decision. It's very useful, very helpful. And it's a real practical contribution to the strengthening of our bilateral partnership and cooperation.
Ambassador, may we request you to address our audience, especially the Filipino businessmen and also the Russian businesses who are watching Open for Business, on how they can further participate in the discussions, in the promotion of the various initiatives of the Russian embassy, and where they can probably get in touch with us, with you, so that they can actively participate in the discussions, and also if there are trade missions and other activities of the embassy that provide support for even small, medium enterprises and small businesses. May we ask you, Ambassador, to address them?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for giving me this unique opportunity. I would like to call on all interested business people of the Philippines. Please be brave, be consistent, and persistent. So now you have unprecedented favorable opportunities to find new business partners in Russia, to open a new big market of Russia and other member states of the Eurasian Economic Union. And I would like to assure all of you that if you have any specific projects, any specific proposals, ideas, and suggestions, don't hesitate to let us know. Us, the Embassy of the Russian Federation in the Republic of the Philippines. And I would like to promise that the Russian Embassy will do its best in order to support all your positive ideas. Thank you very much, and good luck.
We extend our gratitude to the Russian Ambassador, His Excellency Igor Khovaev, for joining us here at the set of Open for Business and here at the set of Net25. And thank you, Ambassador, for gracing the show and taking your time off to visit Eagle Broadcasting Corporation.
Thank you so much, because believe me, please, so it's a great pleasure. Not only responsibility, of course, but also a great pleasure for me to talk with you. And thank you for your very good, very relevant questions.
Thank you. Open for Business will be back. Stay with us. In our term of the week, you take a refresher of business terms to make you updated, more informed, and ready to make smarter business decisions. Our term of the week is credentials. In the world of diplomacy, credentials is the name for letters given to an ambassador by his chief of state and addressed to the chief of state of his host country. They are delivered to the chief of state by ambassadors in a formal credential ceremony, which generally takes place shortly after his arrival at a new post. Until this ceremony has taken place, he is not formally recognized by the host country and he cannot officially act as an ambassador. The letters are termed letters of credence because they request the receiving chief of state to give full credence to what the ambassador will say on behalf of his government. And our word of the week is from Russian President Vladimir Putin. He said, "The ability to compromise is not a diplomatic politeness towards a partner, but rather taking into account and respecting your partner's legitimate interests." Thank you for watching Open for Business. Join us again in the next episodes of Open for Business for more insights from CEOs, thought leaders, and industry experts promoting business development in the Philippines. See you again next Saturday and Sunday for another episode of Open for Business, where we discuss business information, deliver the latest business news to keep you informed and open for business, and be ahead of the curve from vision to action. You're on Facebook Live on Eagle News, and you can watch this video again in the video section of the Eagle News Facebook page and on eaglenewslive.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Eagle News. Catch me also on Net25's Eagle News International as I join Alma Angeles in reporting more business news here and around the world. And we are inviting you all to the EBC Open House and experience Igor. Come join the Trade Fair, Business Forum, and Entrepreneurship Seminar and have fun watching special performances and concert by OPM artists here at the EBC building on November 23. EBC Open House. Mark your calendars. For Open for Business, this is Cesar Vallejos. Have a great day.